2 years ago, we were embroiled in the Iraq War with no end. We were giving bailouts to millionaires like yourself. We gave $700 billion to Wall Street, and our economy was tanking because the banks decided to give anybody who had absolutely no credit or income a house. I think we're better off now because we're no longer doing those things. I acknowledge the fact that the unemployment rate is terrible, but at the same time, Tom, the policies you support just rewarded Wall Street with $140 billion in profits this year. Here's what I think can happen and should happen. Clean energy is going to be the industrial revolution of the 21st century. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be what the world is going to be demanding for the next 100 years. China is going to currently spend 5 times more on clean energy development this year alone than they will on defense. That's profound. They have 2 billion people in China. The problem with New York is that our infrastructure is old. It's energy inefficient. And your property taxes are too high. Now, when I say that your infrastructure is energy inefficient, what that means is that you probably pay a utility bill that's extensive. I was just down at Donna's this morning on Market Street. Her heating and electric bill is $1,000. Now, she's not using $1,000 worth of electricity and heat, but she's leaking that. And so what I advocated to her is I said, Donna, what if we could replace the insulation on your building? What if we could get more energy efficient windows, energy efficient siding, light bulbs, wiring, the base infrastructure of an economy? You'd see your heating bill and electricity bill go down this year alone. And you'd use local labor to do it. We could actually get people back to work to installing those things and making those things. Donna said it sounds like a great idea. So this is what I want to do. I want to give everyone in this room, everyone in this district who's a small business owner or a homeowner, a tax rebate. This year, you use it for one sole purpose. Don't go buy yourself a new TV. We're going to upgrade your infrastructure. We're going to reduce your heating and electricity bill. We're going to give you some income back starting today. Now, the micro level effect, you the individual homeowner, your heating bill, your electricity bill goes down. The macro level effect, we all suddenly start consuming less energy. Prices go down. Now that we've addressed the cost of doing business and living here, we've got some disposable income. And I agree, let the private sector invest. I want to see tax cuts and tax incentives to develop clean energy. I want to start making things again. I want to start selling to the rest of the world that wants to buy these products. And oh, by the way, I want to stop the outsourcing. I don't want to send your job to China, and I don't want to use your tax dollars to do it. But you signed a pledge promising to do that. You signed the American for Tax Reform Pledge. And part of that pledge stipulates that you are to oppose any measure in federal law that will end the tax cuts for American companies that currently move jobs overseas. I don't know how you can do that. These people need got to work. The college kids in this room, I hate to tell you this, but our district has a 26% unemployment rate. 1 in 4 of you will not be able to find a job when you graduate. We've got to do better.
The American Tax Reform Pledge that we signed doesn't say that, Matt. What it says is that we will not support any new taxes in our when we come to Washington, D.C. That's us. I won't support that. Because I believe that we have done for too many years the old practice of, well, we're having problems with meeting our budget, so we're just going to raise taxes, and we're not going to deal with the hard issues of institutionally and organizationally changing how we do business. We must focus 100% on the spending side of the ledger. And when it comes to infrastructure in our backyard, as I said in my opening, I believe that's a proper federal government role. And we will stand for infrastructure projects that will allow us to provide opportunities for local labor, that will provide us opportunities to lay the foundation upon which long-term return on that investment can be laid, because with that infrastructure, interstate commerce can flourish.
Yeah, I would. You know, once again, you just lied to people. You made something up. The Americans for Tax Reform issued a statement saying signatories to the Americans for Tax Reform Pledge had to oppose H.R. 1546, which would have ended tax cuts for companies that outsource American jobs. When I brought up a recent Senate bill and said that I favored it because it would have reversed this, and instead of giving your tax dollars to an American company that's moving your job to India or China, literally we use your tax dollars to cover the cost of closing a factory or a plant, it would have replaced it with a 2-year Social Security payroll tax holiday to bring that job back to the United States. And you said you opposed it. So you're on the record for both. You got to start being honest with us, Tom. We demand better from our leaders.
You both talked about Social Security as a sacred trust. Do you have a specific plan for protecting that?
Sure. I had 3 points to this plan. The first off is we've got to grow the economy. Now, clean energy, as I said, everyone on the planet is going to be buying it. If we can be selling it, it's a basic law of supply and demand in the market. People are demanding things, you supply them with the products, you develop yourself, and you is the best source of quality on the planet, they want to buy from you. That's what I think we ought to do. If we get people back into work, we get people back employed, they're paying into Social Security, it starts to become solid again. The second facet is we have to stop raiding the trust fund. We absolutely have to stop raiding the trust fund. It's been irresponsible, it's gone on for far too long, and it's a disservice to you, the American people. The third thing, and this is only if it's absolutely necessary, and it's a plan that was put forth by the Nonpartisan Congressional Research Service. Rather than privatizing, rather than implementing a means test or reducing benefits or raising the retirement age, we would raise the cap on income, because it's currently, you only pay up to $106,000 of annual income. Now, if you raise it, you're also going to see your benefits go up when you retire as well. But this is what the Congressional Research Service says is the last measure that should be considered on the table that would actually make it solvent without having to reduce benefits, implementing a means test, privatizing, which privatization, folks, means we hand it over to Wall Street. We all saw what Wall Street did in 2008. Do you really want your retirement gambled away for corporate profit? I don't. I don't want it at all. We need to, you were going to say you want to have the honest and open debate. Well, here it is. This is the honest and open debate. And my fear is that you also talk about your freshman 50 and how you're going to vote as a block. What if your block decides they don't want to vote to not privatize? What if they actually want to privatize Social Security? You say if you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us, but what happens if are you going to break your coalition? Are you going to vote on the benefits of your constituents? Or are you going to go down there and vote as part of your voting block that you continuously just proudly espouse to be your greatest asset to being our next representative?
When it comes to Social Security, you're absolutely right. It is a promise that's been made, and it's a promise that needs to be kept. And I learned that firsthand. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the youngest of 12 children. And my father passed when I was 2. So my mom had to raise the last 6 of us that were living in our whole household all by herself. I know there's some people in the audience who knew my mother, and we miss her dearly. But she raised the last 6 of us in our household on a Social Security check and a military death benefit check. So I recognized, because I remember the sound, sleeping in the room next to hers, where she's clicking the calculator, and with that big roll of paper on it, balancing the books every month, making do with that small amount of check. So I recognize that people rely on it. And I recognize that we have to have this discussion. A lot of people have always said, don't talk about Social Security. It's refreshing to me because we are talking about it now. Because we took the stand early on in this campaign that we're going to address this issue because it needs to be addressed. Now, we oppose privatization. I want to be very clear on that because my opponent repeatedly says that we support it. We oppose privatization. But what we also oppose is a limitation on the debate to address this issue. See, what's happening down in Washington, D.C. is a lot of times people are so afraid to even talk about proposals because of the political ramifications of it. And what I'm referring to when I say we need to have an open, honest debate is we've got to put these solutions and these ideas up before the American public and banter it around. I think at the end of the day, the coalition, the freshman 50 that we're referring to, we won't support privatization. We'd be opposed to it because it's not a good, sound policy for going forward. But we can discuss it. And maybe, just maybe, through that discussion, we can come up with solutions that no one thought about before. Fundamentally, I think how we're going to address the Social Security problem, it's going to come out of my generation. And more troublesome to me, it's going to come out of my kid's generation, the 10 and 12-year-old that's not even in the workplace any longer, and he's going to have to foot the bill. We're going to have to foot the bill, and I accept that because that responsibility is something that we should accept and move forward with. But I believe the solution will arise from that area of the workforce. And I agree that we need to grow the economy, because if we grow the economy, then more people will be working, more people will be contributing, and that will go a long way to helping us bridge this problem. But the fundamental thing is we have to have the debate, we have to have the honest discussion, And then the solutions that are derived at will need to be pushed forward, and that's what we're going to do down in Washington, D.C. That's responsible governance as a representative, in my opinion.
I'm an Army officer. I know a little bit something about leadership. True leadership is doing what's right over what's easy. I applaud you for your principled stand on wanting having the open and honest debate. But doing what's right in this case is saying that you'll never allow privatization to even be debated because it should never be on the table. There are certain things that are just fundamental truths. This is one of them, and I wish you would commit yourself to saying, I don't want to have to debate on privatization. I want it off the table forever because the system has worked for 75 years, and I don't want to see it get handed over to Wall Street simply to be gambled away. My dad just retired. I'd like him to have his retirement going forward. I can't stand the thought of him having to work at the age of 84 simply because people like you who wanted to have the principled debate allowed it to be gambled away by Wall Street.